Kevin Tipton is going to speak on updates with the Secretary of State's office. Kevin is a staff attorney with the Secretary of State. He received his law degree from South Texas College of Law in Houston. And as a staff attorney with the Business and Public Filings Division, he focuses on notary law, trademark law, and other various corporate matters. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about perspectives from the Secretary of State. I'm going to try to make this a little as interesting as I can. I know we've had some pretty great speakers today, and I'm going to try to live up to that. So you can let me know if I do a good job. But I'll do my best. So first, we're going to talk about three things today: updating information, record keeping, and then the complaint process. Obviously, updating information is first. This is all fairly simple, but it's really important. So we'll go through a little bit of it. Change of name. So a notary public, you do need to, if you change your name, if you get married, or if you just feel like changing it, you can do that. And when you do, it means your new name won't match your commission. If you want to get that updated, you will file a name change application with us, Form 2305, just like it says. A copy of your certificate of commission, and then most importantly, you need a bond writer that shows that your bond for your notary public commission has been updated with your new name, and then a $20 filing fee. All that's really simple. It's like a one-page form. That's what it looks like. It shouldn't pose too many problems. So just send it to our office. We'll take a look at it. If everything's good, we'll issue you a new commission. And then the only thing you need to worry about is that you also need a new seal. So if your seal doesn't match your commission, that's a problem. So once you get your new commission, just order a new seal. Everything will be very lovely after that. So you also need to update your address. This one's a little bit more important. Well, actually, they're both really important. But this one is really important because we send all official updates to your official address. Whatever address we have in our records for you is what we have. If you're not sure what address that is, you should probably double check. You can do that on our website. So not only do we send all official notice from us, but anyone in the public who has a legal right to contact you, for instance, if they want to request records from you, then they're going to use that address. And if you're not responding to that because you don't live there anymore, you don't work there, whatever it may be, obviously that's going to be a problem. So failure to change your address may consequently result in a revocation of the notary commission if you fail to timely respond to whatever you should have responded to. So it's a bit of a worry. Not to mention the statute also says you have 10 days to do it. So, try to get that done. You can download Form 2302 off of our website. It's right here. We also have them in the front up there. So if you know you've moved recently and your address probably isn't up to date, you can go fill out this form, provide your old address, provide the new one, turn it into us right here. It's going to be extremely easy. It will take you just a minute or two. So after we're done here, please go do that and make sure your address is up to date. So last thing to note here, if you are leaving Texas, then unfortunately you do have to vacate your position of a notary public. That's true, even if you're only going to be gone 6 months or something like that. You can always reapply afterwards, but unfortunately you do have to vacate if you are leaving Texas completely. So that's just something to keep in mind. One other thing I want to note before we move on to this next section is that your address is public record. You might have noticed a second ago I mentioned if you had like a request for your records, you do have to turn over your records potentially if somebody requests them. And because of that, they need to have your address. So your address that you have on file with us is public record. So anybody can see that. So if it's your home address and you don't want your home address to be out to the general public, then we do accept P.O. boxes. If you've got a work address, whatever, as long as you can receive mail there, that's what we're looking for. So if you want to update it for that reason, go ahead. Again, forms outside or on our website, very easy. You're welcome to do that. For record keeping, this is your logbook. Now, as you can see here, I've got like 50 different things that the law says you need to do. I'm going to try not to read these word for word because that'd be very boring. But basically, we'll go through a little bit and point out the key things that you need to make sure you know. I do want to point out that just because, well, let me say, sometimes when you order a logbook from a third party, they'll have various fields that Texas law doesn't require, or they'll generally provide instructions that aren't quite in line with this law. So this is what you actually need to include. It doesn't mean it's the only things, though, you should include. Other speakers today I know have mentioned things that you should record in your logbook And there's nothing that says you can't put extra information as long as it's not confidential. So going down this list, you need the date of each document being notarized. You need the date of the notarization. You need the name of the individual, the signer, the address, all the stuff you guys know. You need to know how the individual was identified. I know we've talked about that today, so I won't go over that too much. You need to know how they were introduced, et cetera. 7 and 8 refer to real estate transactions. So if you have questions about these two specifically, I'm not going to go into them here because it's not useful for everyone, but anyone can go and call our office and ask if you have any questions about what these two mean. And then number 9, most importantly, a brief description of an instrument. I want to note on that one real quick that brief description of the instrument does not mean you write closing or something like that. It needs to be the specific document. So if you have a closing with 50 different signatures that you need to make, and you're normally just entering closing one time in your logbook, that's actually not sufficient. You have to record in your log every time for every different document, for every different signer, which is a lot, I realize that, but that's what Texas law requires. There is a small exception with that where if in each individual document, if one specific individual is signing that same document multiple times using the same type of notarization, then you can list it only once and just note that there are 3 signatures in that document or something like that. But otherwise, unfortunately, for the mortgage contract, for the deed, anything that gets notarized within a closing or any transaction in general, you have to have separate logs for each of those. So, what can a notary not record is confidential information. So again, your record book is public. That means you can't record confidential information in it. That stuff, driver's license, bank, social security number, biometric information, which means fingerprints and stuff like that, email addresses, basically anything that contains personally identifying information is the legal term for it. You guys should not be writing into there. So you can record what type of ID was entered, but you wouldn't record the driver's license number. I realize a lot of you probably do that. We have people all the time that don't realize you can't write a driver's license number on there. You just write driver's license. So definitely keep that point in mind. Same thing goes for social security, anything else. Don't record the specific number. You can only record the general information. So, if someone requests public information, you do have a legal obligation to provide them with copies of it. And if you've already recorded confidential information for whatever reason, for instance, if you have been recording driver's license numbers or something else maybe you didn't even realize, then you have to redact it. So, by the way, as a side note, this presentation is not really going to go into how to respond to any request for public information for copies of your logbook, but if you do get such a request and you're not sure what to do, then definitely please call our office. We'll help you out with that and make sure that you do everything in compliance with the law and don't run into any issues with that. But anyway, let's go over an example of this. Here's somebody's logbook. They've, as you can see, recorded 4 transactions on this page, and some of it may or may not have confidential information. So I'm hoping you guys can take 15, 20 seconds or so and tell me if number 1, 2, 3, or 4 has confidential information in it. So go ahead, look it out, shout it out. People are saying 3 and 4. Very astute observations. Did somebody say 1? Somebody thinks 1. What's wrong on number 1? Okay, anybody think number 2 is wrong? All right. So, answers, just 3 and 4. So, number 1, it can say Texas driver's license because that doesn't specifically identify the individual. No? All right, well, we could talk about it afterwards then. Obviously, there's a bit of a disconnect with previous information. But as for number 2, that was fine. Number 3, has the US passport number, that's a problem. And then number 4 has the fingerprint, that is also a problem. So that's what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes the logbook, and sorry, she asked how the fingerprint is a problem if the logbook actually requests it. Keep in mind that these logbooks, even if they say they aren't necessarily drafted to be in compliance with Texas requirements. So Texas law makes a fingerprint confidential information, and since your logbook is public information, you can't record it. So even though that entry is there, you can't record it. Just like if there was an entry for the driver's license number specifically, you couldn't record that information. So you would just leave that blank. Well, that's a good question. So how do you correct this if it's already in there? The answer is, of course, that you simply throw away your logbook and you start over. And, actually, you probably should not do that. You don't have my blessing to do that. Instead, you just redact it. So whenever anybody requests a copy of it, you copy it, and then you just cover it up in black. And just like that, easy. There's no longer a fingerprint there, no longer a problem. You'd be able to give this information to someone. So you can if you want to make sure. There's nothing that stops you from doing that. But in general, yeah, definitely, if anybody ever requests copies of it, you want to make sure you go through everything you're giving to make sure nobody accidentally put confidential information, including maybe the signer. Maybe they wrote something in there that you didn't even personally write. You still want to make sure that information's there. It doesn't matter who put the information there. If it's there and it's confidential, it needs to be redacted. So, complaints. A complaint happens when a member of the public believes that you have violated any of your duties as a notary public, and then they make a formal complaint with our office. So if a complaint's filed against you, should you be worried? The answer is, of course, yes, you should be very worried because that's a big deal. Here is the process. So if somebody files a complaint against you, keep in mind that it doesn't mean you've necessarily done something wrong. There are plenty of notaries that do everything by the book that still get complaints filed against them. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes people don't understand what your role was there. Maybe they think you should have been verifying that the document itself was, legal or whatever it may be. Or maybe they just don't understand what a notary is supposed to do in general. So just because there's a complaint filed against you doesn't necessarily mean you've done something wrong. But when we receive one, our office will take a look at it. We'll look at only the complaint by itself to see whether or not it's alleging an actual violation. If it does, then we'll open the complaint. The next step is that we contact you and we ask for your side of the story. This is your opportunity to respond to the allegations and tell us, no, this is what actually happened. I didn't do anything like that, or I didn't understand, I'm sorry, whatever it may be. We'll continue the investigation from there. We'll address any follow-up questions that need to go to you, to the complainant. If there are any witnesses, we'll try to reach out to them. And then our office will take action based on those findings. So a complaint can have a variety of different outcomes. It can result in revocation of your notary commission. That's obviously the most severe infraction that can occur. We don't want that to happen. Suspension up to 3 months. If it's fairly severe, but we think that everything can be remedied and hopefully you can learn from this. Maybe it was just a mistake, but a big one, you might be suspended. Educational action happens if it's not so severe of a mistake and we think that just learning about things more would help. Formal warning is kind of along those lines that we basically just tell you, don't do it, here's why. And then finding no grounds for action, that's obviously the best result, where we don't do anything to you because you didn't do anything wrong. So hopefully that's what happens for all of you. Now I will keep in mind that you guys coming to this class, you're obviously more careful and you care a lot more about making sure that you're doing everything right. So you don't have too much to worry about. But if a complaint is filed against you, it's not the end of the world. It's a big deal, but it's not the end of the world. What I can tell you is that you just want to make sure that you work with us and we will work with you. So keep your address updated. Like I said earlier, any official correspondence goes to your official address. I've had multiple notaries where the complaint it looked a little iffy, but it was enough to open it, and we sent notices to the notary, and I fully expected those notaries to come back and say, no, actually, here's what happened, everything's fine. But they didn't, because they never got the notices, and the notices just came back returned, and so we could never reach out to them, and that meant the notaries lost their commission, even though it seemed like there might be something more afoot. So they never got their opportunity to respond. So first thing you want to do, keep your address updated, and then be honest. If you realize that you've made a mistake, the thing to do is not to try to cover it up and deny. Instead, you should be honest with us. We do take that into account in deciding what action to take. If you made a mistake, even a severe one, and you legitimately didn't realize and you want to learn and you want to do better, I can't promise you what we'll do, but we will take that into account and hopefully come to a result that is fair for everyone. You want to read carefully because the complaint will lay out everything that's against you. You want to make sure that you respond to the complaint itself, that you respond to the allegations against you. And if you're confused about anything, you'll be able to let us know and we can clarify. And then be communicative. Even if there's a violation, like I said, we will work with you. So hopefully we can get this resolved. I want to stress that our office does not work for the complainant. Some notaries, when we send a complaint, they treat it as a hostile attack on their integrity, and for the complainant that may be true, but it's not true for us. We are not doing that. We are acting as an independent investigator in the complaint. We don't assume that a complainant is correct just because they made a complaint and just because something bad happened to them. We always want to hear your side of the story. We want to talk with you and understand what happened. And like I said, our goal is to get a fair result and hopefully come to a conclusion that everyone can at least understand and agree with. So that's the goal. Anyway, anybody have any questions at all? All right, let's put this on. Yeah. Anybody want to toss this back there? No, no, nobody wants to do that. Yeah, I tried.
It came to me, that's okay. It's all right, I'll be the runner.
Oh, you can toss it.
I know, that's dangerous. You'd hit me in the head.
I was just curious how many complaints you get per month or per year, and how many are actioned and how many are dismissed, or
Do you know the answer to
how
that?
you deal with them.
I don't know if we have an exact number.
I'm not sure we have an exact number. I don't personally know that exact number. I'm sure somebody has it. So if you talk with somebody at the front desk, they'll probably be able to provide that information if you're curious. But I don't know exactly. It's a fair number of them, though. We definitely, probably close to 100 at least, I would think.
Oh, I'm just...
A year, 100 a year. And to be clear, a lot of those are just misunderstandings where we don't ever actually take any action, or we just do educational action. The number of notary commissions that are actually revoked, even out of those 100, is very small. It's probably less than 10 in a given year. Probably far less than that, probably less than 5. So, any other questions? If you can throw it back there.
It's my turn.
Oh, okay, you've got a question too. Perfect.
Okay, when we talked about giving an oath,
Yeah.
how do you document that you actually gave that oath? It's kind of your word against theirs if the person said, oh, they didn't give me an oath.
Well,
I
you're still completing the notarial certificate. You're still completing the notarial certificate for an oath.
Yeah, well, and so
So there's
you're
no
right.
proof.
It is kind of a he said, she said scenario in that if somebody comes before you and takes an oath and you do your notarial duties correctly, you fill out the certificate that says this person just took an oath in front of me, and then they later deny and say, I didn't do anything like that. There's not necessarily going to always be some way to prove that. And that would be one reason that, other people have said to make sure you're taking detailed notes in your logbook. That kind of thing can help. That way you make sure that you're providing all the information you need to back it up.
And there's nothing that says that, your logbook, you can't record, as Kevin discussed, some information, right? But for best practice, for sort of covering yourself, you can have, a supplemental log that you basically retain other information in. Again, if that's requested and you have to produce it, you would want to make sure that's redacted if it's anything confidential, but there's nothing that says that you can't protect yourself by, including additional information.
Yeah, theoretically, if you wanted to record someone taking an oath, you could do that. So it's whatever you feel you need to do to make sure you're fully protected is generally going to be okay. If you have any concerns about whether any specific thing you want to do will work, just definitely call us and we'll talk it through with you and make sure that everything's good. Because, basically as a notary, you guys need to make sure that you cover your bases in that situation. So if you're thinking it's one that might come back to bite you, especially if you guys just notarize things for people you don't necessarily know because you have your own business or whatever it may be, then definitely having more information in your records can only really help you. So definitely do that. All right. Yes.
Okay, so for online notaries, earlier they said that the retention period for the record book was 5 years, but what is the retention period for the traditional
Okay,
notary
yeah, I
books?
actually realized that slide wasn't in there and I forgot to include it, so I apologize for that. So you do have to keep it for the entire length of your commission, and then if it contains any notarizations taken within the last 3 years at any given date, then you need to include it. So if your commission expired today, March 25th, and you notarize something today, March 25th, that means you have to keep that record book, even though your commission just expired, until 3 years from now. So March 25th, 2022. Does that make sense?
It's the best practice to maintain all of your...
That's what I was about to say, though. That's the legal requirement. Really what you should do, these logbooks aren't so big. I would keep them for a very long time. Maybe 20 years from now, you could toss one out. But really, if it's not too much of a hassle to keep them, then, like I said, was answering her question, you want all this stuff just to back you up to make sure that you have everything you need, that if there is a problem, you have all this evidence here to back you up and say, yeah, this person was here, they did provide their driver's license or their passport or whatever it was, they were in front of me. And that evidence isn't always conclusive, but it helps. And so that's why even if you aren't legally required to keep it for that long, it might be in your best interest to just continue keeping it forever and, well, forever. So,
I think there's...
yes. Do you have a question, ma'am?
Yes,
All
I
right.
do. That's why I'm holding this big orange.
Yes,
Squishy
you've got
box.
the orange cube. I'm happy to answer.
Do you guys ever send any mail to us at all? Because I've been a notary for just under 3 years, and I've never received anything mailed to me. And I was a little concerned, so I checked my address, and it is correct.
We don't send things constantly, certainly not. I mean, we don't send like a yearly update or anything like that. So it is possible if there's no complaints against you or no other issues that you wouldn't get mail possibly for the entire length of your commission. We'll let you know, I believe, when the commission's going to expire. So maybe once every 4 years you would get something. But otherwise, no, Sarah says we don't even do that. So. You can definitely, though, like I said, if any of you feel like you haven't gotten mail in a while,
I mean,
just
once you've
double
been
check on our
commissioned
website.
initially, as long as there's no complaints or things of that nature, you shouldn't expect to receive anything from us.
Yeah, but definitely it doesn't hurt to double check, make sure your address is up to date.
I think Sandra...
Sandra's going to hand the cube to the next person. We'll continue on.
Toss it, that's the point.
Yeah.
Had a comment to the keeping the record book years, good Lord, long time ago. I had recorded or notarized, I guess it was like a deed of trust or something between two brothers who inherited some property from their dad. 4 years later, the brother was saying that he never signed the document and claiming that the brother forged his signature. The lady that I worked with, because I had already left the firm, she called me and asked me could I produce my record book. Unfortunately, I had moved like 3 times. My book was in a storage facility, and I went through the boxes, but I never could find my book. They tried to have my commission revoked because I couldn't produce the document. And when I called the Secretary of State, I told her, I go, why is he wanting to revoke my commission? Because whatever it is they were contesting, the brother that he was saying forged his signature, he said, forget it, just, I'm done with it, he can have whatever. So they had already resolved the problem, but yet he continued to persist to have my commission revoked. But they did work with me and they settled whatever. But like I said, it was 4 years later they asked me to produce it.
And there is a difference between, there's a problem with the underlying document, which we generally don't have any purview over, like if there's something defective within the document itself, versus, you have to maintain your record book and you still have to comply with notary law.
Right.
So that's the other thing that we see with complaints. The complaint may not have merit, but if you haven't, responded to a request for that book, if you're not maintaining it when we ask for your last 10 notarizations, which is part of just the regular course of what we do with a complaint, we will take action if we notice that there's some discrepancies and violations there as well. So, yeah.
It's just wise to hold on to it.
Yep. Is there another question?
Exactly. Here. Over there first. Yeah, and to be clear on that, again, that's one of the things I was talking about where the notary hasn't necessarily even done anything wrong, but people will get angry at the situation and just say, you know what, this notary is at fault anyway. They may not even be correct, but, you know, unfortunately that happens. So even a notary that does everything right can still have complaints filed against them.
Hi, I have a simple question. I have a notary stamp that has expired. How do we dispose of that, or what do we do with the expired stamps?
Burn it. I mean, I would recommend destroying it.
Just throw it? Okay, it's expired, so. Okay.
If you're worried about it being safeguarded, I would destroy it.
Yeah, and to be clear, what everyone else said was that stamp companies will sometimes reuse those, so you would take off the part that has your name and
But for our
information on it.
purposes, we would just care that
and do
it's-
that. But yes, as far as the official answer, you
Toss
can just
it.
get rid of it so that no one else can use it.
Hi, I have a question about description of what you put in your logbook.
Yep.
I do a lot of real estate transactions, so I have a ton of easements, deeds. Should I be putting like the address, like deed at 121 Main Street, or?
No,
There should
you
be,
can.
there should be a spot in the book for.
Yeah, that was one of the real estate things. If it relates to property, you do have to record some information. Well, I guess on the grantor, I'm not sure you have to actually record property information.
you do.
So that would
You
be
do.
something.
Kevin, you do.
Do you? Okay. there
Yeah,
you
so
go.
if it's a real estate transaction and you're dealing with a lot of those, I would recommend getting a book that is specific to notaries who deal with a lot of real estate transactions, because it'll have that additional, you know, field, if you will. Or for your purposes, I mean, just put it underneath and basically label it and go from there.
Yeah, if you look at this, it's number 8, so you don't necessarily need the address. You need the
you do.
county where the land is located. That's from the statute.
Yeah.
So it's the county where the land is located. But for your purposes, like we discussed earlier, more information is generally better. So it definitely doesn't hurt to have that information in there.
You
That
need
way.
the name and the mailing
if-
address of the grantee.
Yeah, well, exactly. You need the name and the mailing address of the grantee. You need the county where the land is located. You don't necessarily need the address, but it's a good idea. So I would definitely say if you've got room in your logbook to put that information in there, definitely do it. If you don't have room, you might think about finding a logbook that has that information. That way, if anybody does ever come back with a complaint, like we mentioned earlier, that even if you did everything right, somebody else is fighting over this property for some reason, at least you'll be able to point to your logbook and say, not only did this person appear before me, sign my logbook, it was specifically for this piece of property.
Well, and what you just brought up is a good point, because a lot of times we'll get a complaint that we can't take action on, but again, during the course of the investigation, we'll see a record book for real estate transactions where the proper information wasn't recorded, and now we do have standing. So it's one of those things where you may not have been doing anything wrong in terms of what initially was brought up, but then we find something else. So it's a good idea to make sure that review the statute for the specific
Also
notarizations.
on that, Robert Summers is the Director of Government Filings, and he was doing a class in the other room earlier. If you have any questions regarding that, you can email him, and if you need his email address, you can contact me or him outside, and you can email him directly with questions regarding that, and he will get with his brain team, and they can answer that question directly.
Yep.
I had one additional
Yeah.
comment. I work for Travis County, and my coworker used to be in the clerk's office, and he told me that notaries would bring in their old notary books, and I'm not sure if they file them, or I guess they file them away.
Into the county clerk?
Yes.
Yeah, so there actually is a rule where you're supposed to do that. I would suspect most county clerks, our office doesn't enforce that you do that. There is a law, I'm honestly not sure off the top of my head even where it is, that says that certain logbooks should be turned into the county clerk after the period where they expired. So if you want to call your county clerk and ask them if they're aware that that even exists, then you can. I suspect most counties, especially smaller counties, I mean, Travis County is obviously very big, so they might be more up to date on that kind of thing. But a lot of counties probably will tell you to, move along because they don't know what that means.
I've had somebody come in, already sign their document, and then come in and say, hey, I need to get this notarized, and I explain you're supposed to sign it in front of me. Many times they say, can I just mark through and re-sign it or something? And I've never known the answer, so I always tell them no. Go get another copy and sign it in front of me. What is the rule on that?
They can, I mean, and it's up to them. You might, in that situation, tell them, I can't guarantee you that this document is going to be valid if you do this, because you definitely don't want to speak for what some third party is going to think of them having signed the document twice. But in theory, again, you're not notarizing to guarantee the validity of the document. All you're saying is that this person signed before me. So if they come before you and they sign it, then you can issue a notarization that says, yes, you've signed it. So I would definitely give them that disclaimer, but in theory, if they're fine with it, then you can go ahead and do it.
I've been a notary for about 2 years now, and my book is very sparse. I have a lot of empty pages because I'm so hesitant to notarize. There's another notary in my office, and they go to her first, and I'm always grateful up until today.
Yeah.
So my question is, at 4 years term, I just need confirmation, at 4 years term, do I need to start a new book when I start a new term?
You don't have to. No, if there's plenty of space, you're welcome to keep using the same one.
Any other questions?
It's basically not a question on the online notarization.
Yeah.
For those who are online notaries, and when you're doing it, make sure when you get something general and someone wants to do it online, that document is approved to be done online. Because whatever they try to go do with it, it will be rejected if it's not allowed to be done online. So make sure your document is allowed to be done online.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's a service that you would offer to your customers to make sure that they aren't, paying for services they don't necessarily need. There's nothing technically wrong. I mean, if, again, some third party doesn't like an online notarization, that doesn't mean they can go file a complaint against you or anything like that. But it's definitely good advice to make sure that your clients are aware that some people may not treat online notarizations with as much validity as they should be. And they are equally as valid, but we can't control what other people think. So,
Okay.
yes.
I want you to know that this has been an awesome, awesome conference, and I'm comparing it to the NNA. And what makes this so special is that it is Texas specific.
Well, we're
So
glad to help.
I've gotten so much more than the NNA. NNA is good. Don't get me wrong. The conferences are good. NNA conferences are very good.
Well, we appreciate that, and along those lines, anyone who has not completed an evaluation, we would really appreciate it. This is only our second year of hosting the conference, so we're hoping to keep it going, and we would appreciate any feedback. We appreciate you guys coming today for your.
That was my next question. You just took over.
Yeah, that's my job.
Hold on.
That's my job.
Please ask the question.
Well, it really wasn't a question. Yeah, it is a question. I want to know, because I heard what you said, and I just want to know if you are going to do it every year, because I can just see it growing. I love it.
Well, you're looking at the legal staff of the Secretary of State right now, because we've had some people leave, so yeah, we will.
We're going to try to do it as often as we can. I don't want to commit to yearly, but I think there was 18 months in between. I think it was 18 months in between the last two, which seems pretty reasonable. So we definitely hope to have another one for sure. And hopefully many more. And as far as those surveys go, by the way, please, again, answer them. And even if you have things that are small and you generally enjoyed everything, please take note of that. We are listening to everything. We've had quite a few very understandable complaints, and we want to know that so that we can make sure we have the best experience possible so that everyone has, learns everything that they can. So even little things, please tell us.
Thank you.